Most horror movies have great chase scenes, especially slasher movies. So we're going to count down my 10 favorite horror chase scenes. Let's do this. What's up, guys? It's time for another Drumdums Top 10. We just did Top 10 Best Horror Double Features, and that was recommended by Christine Brown. Now we're going to do one by a user on YouTube, Torres. He suggested that I do Top 10 Chases in Horror. That is an irresistible premise. I had to jump all over that. So thank you, good sir, for suggesting that. And I get so many great suggestions from you guys. Also, before I jump into this, I'm going to start doing a weekly live stream for as long as I can, because I enjoy talking to you guys live. I get a lot of good ideas from you guys, just hanging out, I guess. So right now the plan is every Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that way it keeps it on a schedule and you guys know when to look for the next live stream. And it's usually like an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, however I feel. But I'll pick like a subject, a topic, and then we'll discuss maybe horror news, and then of course we'll do like questions and answers, stuff like that, horror related, a lot of fun. So bring your popcorn. Now, of course, if there's any spoilers to be had in these, I will give you a warning. I think most of them you're pretty safe, but there might be one in here that might have a spoiler, but I'll be very careful. And like I said, I'll give you a warning if it does have a spoiler. So, 2 honorable mentions also. So first honorable mention, and I do think this is a horror movie, the first Terminator. Really the whole movie is a chase. The Terminator is chasing Sarah Connor. His goal is to kill Sarah Connor. And I love that Sarah Connor has one of the greatest character arcs probably in cinema history, because she starts off this shrinking violet, but then she quickly realizes that she's going to be a very important member of the resistance. So at the end of this movie, it's just her and the Terminator. And so she's got to, use her wits about her and beat this thing. And it's very insane. I remember the first time I saw the Terminator, I couldn't even let go of my seat in that last part. Even when she's lowering a hydraulic press on the Terminator, I still was scared for her. That's how effective the Terminator was as a killer. Next time I'll mention, I'm going to give this to a good creature feature, the first Jurassic Park. The scene with the T-Rex, really the first big scene with the T-Rex at night, just the way that scene is directed by Spielberg is just genius. And, the iconic scene when they're in the Jeep and you got Jeff Goldblum in the back and he's telling them to go faster and he literally just sees the T-Rex coming at him. That is one of the craziest chase scenes I think I've ever seen. And that movie has more than one great chase scene. You got the Velociraptors in the last act of the movie as well. But that scene's iconic with the T-Rex. Okay, top 10. Number 10 is a movie that I reviewed for my daughter, actually, Eden Lake. This movie is terrifying, and it's crazy that the antagonist is these kids. They're insane. And I like when a horror movie like steps outside of the box and presents things that you wouldn't consider scary in your everyday life. Kids usually aren't scary, but when they're in horror films, they're terrifying. And these kids are that. This will be a little bit of a spoiler warning, but this couple, they're on this getaway together. These kids make their life a living hell. And so in the last act, you're just rooting for them. And every time you want something to happen, I guess in a good way, it ends up going the opposite direction. It gets really depressing, actually. And so in the end, you're thinking, again, spoiler warning, you're thinking, okay, after all this horrible, depressing stuff that's happened, this woman is going to get out of this, right? She's going to beat these kids and we're going to be happy. No, she dies at the end. So it's a little bit of the unexpected, and to me that goes a long way in a chase scene. I like a chase scene that I don't really see what's coming around the corner. I'm surprised. Number 9, Predator. I freaking love the last act of Predator. The last act of Predator is probably one of my favorite last acts in cinema history, with Schwarzenegger going against the Predator. And up to this point, you're thinking there's no way that somebody like Schwarzenegger can beat the Predator. That's how effective the Predator was as a villain. I love how Arnold, he's like setting up all these booby traps and everything. And just, the whole scenes at night, you got that iconic war cry from Schwarzenegger, one of my favorite war cries. And, you know, it's on. It's a battle. And, you know, it's Schwarzenegger trying to get away from the Predator because he knows if the Predator gets him.
Kill me, I'm here, kill me! I'm here, kill me! Come on, kill me, I'm here!
He's done. He's dead meat. And of course, you know, they go head to head, they fight, and, you know, he can't stand a chance. So he has to use his wits to finally beat the Predator. Number 8, gonna give you a Friday the 13th movie. Friday the 13th Part 3. Even though Part 4 is my favorite movie, and Part 3 is probably not, it's probably in my top 5. I love the last act of Part 3 for some reason. With Dana Kimmel and Richard Brooker, I think that's a testament to what 2 actors can do for a scene. You know, you just have a camera, 2 actors, and you have to be scared shitless of this guy. And Dana Kimmel sells it. She does a great job. She turns it up to the psychotic level. When a character goes that crazy and she's the prey, that makes me like her even more, you know? And it makes me curious to see if she flips it and, like, you know, scares the villain. And she does kind of bring a little bit of fear out of Jason in that scene. Played by the great Richard Brooker. Rest in peace, good sir. But I just love that scene when she grabs the axe and she just thrusts it in his head. And that axe wound, you know, as far as like wounds in a mask go, that's probably one of the most popular. For some reason, it's a big part of the mask. I mean, look at that right there. Every Jason mask is going to have that axe wound. That's from Friday Part 3. Number 7, American Psycho. The scene with the chainsaw. There's this whole section of the movie where Patrick Bateman, he's picking up this call girl, this prostitute, bringing her home, and pretty much torturing her. But he's always able to lure her back with money. And so, like, the second time he lures her back, that really cryptic scene where he tells her don't leave and he grabs a clothes hanger. Ooh. But then, of course, they're under the sheets and, you know, she sees the blood, she freaks out and she leaves. And then he chases after her naked with, like, tennis shoes on. And he drops the chainsaw down the stairs corridor and he kills her. It's a really psychotic, crazy, yet fun scene. Number 6, The Shining. The Shining is one of the greatest horror films ever made, if I'm being honest. But that last scene when Jack just goes balls crazy, I guess it really starts with the stairs and the give me the bat. From there, really, technically, that's when the chase starts. And then they end up in the bathroom. He's taking the axe, chops the door, here's Johnny, all that great stuff. But then the last act, when they're finally in the snow, and Jack is pretty much freezing to death. And Wendy and Danny, they're in the maze, and luckily they use the maze to save themselves because Jack freezes to death. But just watching the masterwork of Kubrick unfold in that movie is pure cinematic bliss. Or, as I like to call it, cinematic Kool-Aid. I've used that term before. I'm not proud of it. Number 5, probably one of the craziest, most psychotic chase scenes ever, Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Sally. I think this counts because eventually Sally does get out, but for a good portion of that last act, she's stuck in that chair at the table and she's being psychologically tortured, you know? And Tobe Hooper's direction in that scene really sells how crazy it is, how loud it is. And Marilyn Burns, her screaming in that scene, that's not acting, folks. She was literally scared for her life in that scene. She was completely exhausted. And so by the time she jumps out of that window, she's pretty much a basket case. And to make matters worse, when she jumps in that truck at the end, she's done. And then Tobe Hooper tells her, we need to shoot it again. Can you imagine that, going through all that and then she had to shoot the truck scene again? I'm amazed she came out of it alive. Number 4, A Nightmare on Elm Street. This franchise has a lot of great chase scenes, and I didn't want to like use the same franchise twice. But if I had to pick, I'd say the first one just because of Nancy you know, putting together all these booby traps. I like a final girl that's very resourceful, and she sure is. Nancy's such a great final girl, actually.
Come on, Freddy. Can't you catch me?
I'm gonna split you in two.
But that chase with Freddy, she's always one step ahead of him. She's always ready for him, ready for the attack. And she pretty much owns Freddy in that last act of the first movie. Number 3, Prom Night. Believe it or not, the first Prom Night. And it's the chase with the lady in the red dress. That's what I always like to call her. I think the character's name is Wendy. But this is one of those like really long and drawn out chase scenes. But I think from a director's standpoint, there's a lot of unique angles. You can tell that they played around with the locations and the settings, a lot of low angles, but just a lot of fun to be had. I like when you can tell that a director has really done his homework and framed out a scene to the best of his ability, you know, making the most out of everything. And for some reason, this is one of those chase scenes that is so memorable to me. It always sticks out. When I think chase scenes, I always think of the Prom Night lady in the red dress scene. But also there's a lot of like iconic shots in that scene along the way too, you know, very memorable stuff. Now, number 1 and number 2, I'm still not sure which way I want to go because I want to make it count. And I think I'm going to switch it. So this was going to be my number 1, but I think I'm going to make it my number 2 because I think number 2 deserves it, okay? So number 2 is Halloween 2, not Halloween 1. I prefer the chase scene actually in Halloween 2. I think it's brilliant. And say what you want about the slow pace of Halloween 2, I think that slow pace actually adds to the craziness of the last act, if that makes sense. Because you have that scene, you know, you've been waiting for this confrontation between Laurie and Myers. And so Laurie is out of it. She's at a medicinal disadvantage, I guess you could say. And she sees, like in a blurry vision, Myers lifting up the nurse. And then all of a sudden the music kicks in and that's when it starts. And it's like fight or flight kicks in and then the chase is on. You know, and then you have that great shot where she's going to the elevator, Myers coming at her. His hand would have probably stopped that. But I don't know though, because at my job actually, there's sometimes I've stuck my hand in the elevator and it still kept going. So I'm gonna cut him some slack on that one. But really the big thing about that chase scene too is at the end, Loomis coming in, saving the day, willing to give his life to save Laurie Strode. That one event made Loomis probably one of my favorite horror characters ever.
It is time, Michael.
You know, the famous line, "It's time, Michael." And then he lights, you know, it goes out with a bang, literally. I think that's what you want to do in any good chase scene. You want to lay it out start to finish. You want that last segment of the chase scene to go for broke, really. You know, everything in the kitchen sink. And there's some great final acts in the Halloween franchise, but 2 I think might be the best. And then at number 1, I'm gonna give it to Scream, actually. The section with Drew Barrymore. Just because I remember watching that scene, it's just such a fun exchange. It starts off nice and light, and then it gets really serious. There's a point where you're like, oh my God, they're not messing around. This guy is really creepy and he wants to kill her.
Name the killer in Halloween. No. Come on, it's your favorite scary movie, remember? He had a white mask, he stalked the babysitters.
No. Michael.
Yes! Very good.
He does it through the dialogue. You know, he tells her what he's gonna do to her. And this is dialogue that you usually don't hear in horror movies. Usually you see what the killer's gonna do, but when the killer describes to the character what he's about to do to her, it makes it that much more effective. So, you know, eventually too, you know, it's like a pressure cooker, and eventually it's gonna go off. Drew Barrymore's character is gonna have to run. And of course, when she does, she's caught and then he stabs her. And then it's like one of the best opening title moments ever. As soon as he stabs her, then you get the big Scream logo. But that is my #1 favorite chase scene. So anyway, guys, that's it. We did it. Thank you for Torres for that great idea. I had a lot of fun going through these. Let me know in the comments your favorite chase scenes. Looking forward to hearing them. Didn't even have any Giallo ones on here too. I should have. There's some really good Giallo chase scenes actually, especially in like Deep Red and Tenebrae. Thinking out loud again. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Free For All Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.